Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Unlock Show. I'm your host, Tracy Wilson, and this is where we unlock all the secrets to business growth and personal development for you, the entrepreneur. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to have the amazing guest of mine, Vinnie Potestivo, and I am really excited to have him here all the way from Brooklyn. Now, as you guys know, I usually stuff up people's surnames. He's probably going to correct me that I've said that wrong. And he told me that when you've seen him on the screen, he's in a Brooklyn nightclub right now, and I'm sitting in my home studio on the Gold Coast of Australia. So, we might get a bit of background music as we move through today's show. We have been talking behind the scenes, and we've been having a bit of a giggle about a number of different things. So I have no doubt that this show is going to be full with moments where you can smile. We might even make you giggle and laugh a few times throughout today's show. Let me tell you a little bit about Vinnie. Now, he's an Emmy Award-winning Media Advisor who actually specializes in growing personal brands. He's led multiple different companies, and he's actually been able to help people scale their content distribution, create amazing brand visibility, and media reach. He is the editor-in-chief of I Have a Podcast. So for those of you that are joining today, because you've seen the title of today's show being Amplify Your Brand, we're going to unlock the secrets of the power of podcasting. You are absolutely in the right place. For somebody who owns a business like that, I Have a Podcast, you guys want to listen up. He's responsible for discovering and amplifying the voices of independent podcasters worldwide. And he is a network executive of MTV Networks. He'll tell us a little bit about that. He's pioneered the way that brands and business owners contribute to their public narrative by making them stars and the producers of their own television series. Love, love, love that. So I'm not going to go into a whole great big more spiel about him. I think that says it all. And you can tell just by looking at the screen that this is going to be an exciting episode. Welcome to the show, Vinnie. It is fantastic to have you here.
Yeah, it's fantastic to be here. I'm dying right now, hysterical laughing, because I'm the one in Brooklyn and you're the one with like the police sirens in the background. And
oh, can you hear that? Oh my God. I normally have the doors down. I've got a visitor. I normally have my doors shut and you don't hear that. So you can hear sirens.
Hey, we're in it. We're in it. We're live. We're connected. Things are happening around us. And we are here in this moment. So like I have my dogs in the background. Shout out to the my four-legged staffers of VPE TV. Thank you for being here and having me, and for the organization and energy of the show. I'm excited for what we're about to do here.
Yeah, no, boom. Welcome. Anyway, let's talk a little bit. I mean, you and I are both super excited about the power of podcasting, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to know a little bit about, how did you get to this place? How did you end up, having the level of success that you've had, working with people, like creating your own podcast, and then actually working with other people to grow theirs? Like, how did that all come about? Where did that interest come from?
Oh gosh, a coping mechanism for trying to get out of something dark in life, finding that I'm really good at collaborating with people and being sort of sensitive of other people's space, being sensitive to their goals, being sensitive to the platforms that could support them. It kind of pushed me into my own direction of leveraging what I was good at, which is databases. I'm a data guy. And I loved talent. I loved people who performed and created content and entertained and had this ability to connect with audiences. And in 1998, I took out an ad on a small magazine in New York called Backstage, which is where non-union performers go for opportunities. And I said, looking to start my casting files.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking for opportunities, send me your headshots. And I got 700 submissions sent to my my dorm room, by the way, in college.
Wow.
And that was the big sign. And I thought, now I have this data skill set of Excel and Access and databases. And I was working at Credit Suisse First Boston as a data compliancy officer for the Y2K. I went to school between 95
I remember
and
that.
99. This was like, hard disk, floppy disk, small disk, no disk. This was, can you burn my CDs into my computer so that I can play my iTunes? What an awesome time to learn how to move media. And it was some of those really real tactical skills that got me into MTV for 10 years, where I learned I was hired to organize the creative process. That's one thing I could do out of the gate, but learning the creative process of casting was something I was exposed to. And that's where, I mean, at MTV and from 98, 99 to 2007, I got to work with the Osbournes and realizing their show and see Ashton Kutcher develop Punk'd and turn it into what it was. And I'll tell you what my job was on season 1, but we could talk about that later. Working with Jessica Simpson to reclaim her narrative through Newlyweds, giving Mandy Moore an opportunity to showcase who she truly is on MTV. For me, it was all about time. If you can give me the time,
amazing.
And I know how to work within these parameters, you'd be amazed at what we can do. And I was lucky to work at MTV at a point in time where we trusted the talent. So we literally gave talent cameras, and hence a lot of this unscripted programming that came from MTV during the time I was there. And then as I left in 2007, they were giving the cameras to the audience. And if you think about Jersey Shore and The Hills and Laguna Beach and some of the other shows that sort of came afterwards, social media, people holding we're ready for cameras in our own hands. We were now ready we no longer wanted to be represented in media. We wanted to be in media, and we have now that option. And what we can do as business owners, what we can do as independent voices, like I'm Tracy, I just named a bunch of people. The thing that you have more than they do is content. You own your content. They sold it. The TV network owns all those shows that I just mentioned, and the power you are sitting on, the literal social gold that you were sitting on to be able to be prepared for the future of media is really, really exciting. And you're doing it all right. So I love it. I'm excited to be here.
What a really interesting story. And, coming from Brooklyn and kind of being in the thick of all of that and being able to be exposed to the likes of MTV and all of those amazing people, but then to be able to see the transformation that has taken place and the journey that media has taken over the last few decades must be really fascinating to watch and see. And the point that you make around, what's quite interesting for us as content creators now, like you pointed out, we have the power. Now we have, you grab yourself a microphone, grab yourself a camera, a few little tools that are really inexpensive, and boom, you've got your own show. And as you were talking about, over time, this concept of people wanting to see reality, the likes of Jersey Shore and,
all the shores,
marries a wife, and all
Housewives,
of that sort of stuff.
all those. Yeah, I've done those too.
They were all born in that era. And now for us as content creators, being able to just start that, pick up a phone, pick up a camera and go and have other people be really interested in what you're doing and saying is phenomenal. But the fact that you own that, and I think let's talk a little bit more about that, and why is that so important? Because I think a lot of people don't really understand the importance of what, and it's a distinction that needs to be made here.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I can answer that very personally and honestly as an American. In America, when we sell a TV show, the network owns it. There's not even a conversation about, do I retain a certain percentage? I'm commissioned, pay or play, to work on it one way or another. That's a big reason why some of the biggest TV powerhouses in media sell their shows to Sweden, and they go to other English-speaking territories where they can prove the show, where actually those countries allow the creator to participate in owning the content, and then they license it out. So we know Lion's Den in certain areas, Shark Tank Canada, up in Canada, Shark Tank here in the States. That's a concept that someone owns and licenses out. The paycheck is way different than if it was a commission. And the thing about television, I feel bad sometimes. I'm not poo-pooing on television, but TV is about retention. TV is all about keeping eyes on that network because that's where the ads are. And if you think about it, television is really a byproduct of the video industry of advertising. And we get it on television. There's a lot of other things on TV now, like YouTube, Netflix, so when I say TV, I'm kind of referring to like maybe traditional cable, satellite cable. Yeah. But we understand that we get on a national signal, even in Australia or in India, where there's a large one single time zone, but a giant terrain where you're getting national programming and also localized news, localized segments. That's the power of broadcast. Broadcast is a series of narrow casts. Narrow casts are what podcasts are. So you ask me the future of podcasting. Well, first and foremost, I worked at MTV. I can confirm for you that if you don't have to watch TV to know what's on it if you can hear it. I grew up in the 80s and 90s watching music videos. I'm partially responsible for why they're gone to a different network. But I want to point out MTV created the music video genre, the format that we now know it as. Also, Adam Curry, one of the VJs, one of the hosts on MTV, is credited with creating the podcast, this idea of RSS to an audio link that can be downloaded. Back in 2005, you really needed access to a microphone. So it was a lot of audio engineers, artists really specifically were big in podcasting, because if you had access to a microphone, that was, USB, even the USB plugins to our computers now weren't around the way they were then. And it was I had a really hard time at MTV convincing them to focus. In 2006, wanted to do a podcast talent show, but they wanted me to focus on YouTube. And in 2007, I converted my first podcast, Man and Wife, into a TV show, broadcast show, a late night sex talk show where a married couple talked about sex. For the first time ever, we have like two people who have a relationship to talk about, the context to talk about it. So the power of podcasts and what I've been able to, to do with them, you prove an audience, you prove expertise, you grow authority, you grow reach, you do all that with podcasting. And it's why I'm finally I'm about 2 years now. I'll be about a year and a half into my own personal podcast journey on this side of the mic, this side of the camera. For years I've cut my voice out. I go out and audition housewives and reality TV people for Diane von Furstenberg and Rob, like big name shows, but I cut my voice out. And I was trained to do that professionally. So podcasting, I come into podcasting as a TV expert, but I still have a lot of deconditioning, unconditioning, and reconditioning, relearning to do as a podcaster. Again, because the rules are different. We have so much power in, I mentioned licensing, syndicating also. So one of the things I do with my podcast is I have a half-hour TV show that airs on about a dozen and a half AVODs. So I don't put ads in my podcast. I put ads in the TV show. And the TV show already has ads because the ads are buying into the network time. In addition to that, I take a 27-minute version, an audio version of my podcast, and I'm able to buy radio time, FM radio time during morning drive in certain territories. And that's been an awesome way for me to keep my podcast, a conversation that I own, live and connected to millions, if not hundreds of thousands, but millions of listeners in a territory that I can then, through social media, geo-target and push to listen to this live and create an event. I can work with a location in that space, maybe a gym that has an audio, room or a theater that might have an audio room or something like that, where I'd be able to push to have an event and a community event. These are things that you can do only if you're getting your guests to sign releases and you can prove that you own the IP. Can I keep going on and on, or am I just laying it on too thick?
I want to sort of, no, it's all great. I mean, it's all
there's the
relevant,
IMDb
and I just
part.
want to kind of like delve a little bit deeper into that, because, this world that we now live in, right? So things have changed significantly over the years, and this ability that we now have to be able to use our voices to share a message. And you talked, what was intriguing to me is that back at the beginning, you were talking about even Jessica Simpson, right? And you were like, how do we almost reinvent Jessica so that it changes the narrative about what the public thinks of her?
It's almost like you were there when she pitched the show to us, because that's the sole reason why she did it was exactly that.
So that's you got celebrities that are doing that have twigged on that, gosh, if I can create this new world, new environment for me, and I can share that with the world, that creates, going back to this concept of amplifying your brand, creating this brand that the world is able to see you through a new lens now. And that new lens is this new brand that you've created. Can we talk a little bit more about that, but specifically in the context of a small business owner or an entrepreneur, and maybe they haven't tapped into the power of live shows or podcasting just yet? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you sort of just like described the secret sauce to discovery, by the way. It's not about visibility, and it's about shareability. And you use this word share specifically. It wasn't about having a TV show. It was about sharing this moment and the audience sharing this moment. And this is where a lot of people I think get it wrong, because they think for more discoverability, they need more visibility. I'm going to take out more ads. I'm going to have more billboards. I'm going to have more of the same thing over and over again. There's a part of our ego that in a pack mentality, when I recommend, for example, when I recommend Tracy to my friends, I'm expecting them two things. One, for them not to know her, because I'm trying to bring value to their lives by bringing them information they don't already know, right? So I don't think they have access, which is why I'm alerting them about Tracy, and then I'm going to give them the information. Networking is the ultimate share. I'm going to give them the information to do so that they're successful, in that share. It's not about if I were to hire you, and you were to help me, and the best thing I can do for you is not leave a review for you, but is to call 3 of my friends and tell them the experience that I have with you. It's to share that experience with you. You can share experiences. You can share merchandise, by the way. Some people are even a little bit like, oh, well, I don't need a hat. I don't need a hoodie. I don't need a sweatshirt. Well, you know what? When we started going back to music festivals and when outdoor theaters in Brooklyn started opening up, I was wearing a college hat, or I'd wear my favorite brand hat. I can't tell you how many times a conversation started just because of the logos and association that we have. What a cool opportunity for me to create community with somebody. And you give us that power. You empower us. Even if it's a landscaping shirt. My favorite dentist, dentists tend to write their names on toothbrushes. So it's fun. It's just fun to think of the ways that, and actually,
one would hope you're not sharing your toothbrush.
No, my unused ones though. That's a great point. I never use the ones that the dentist gives me. I buy my own. So those are the ones I share with. But by the way, dentists are a high share point. If you're getting, that's like the high trust point. So it's the sharing piece that matters. It's again, not having more visibility, not increasing strictly visibility, but making sure that visibility is shared. Podcasting gives you the opportunity to share something. If you have visibility, if you win an award, best of sales, best department, best, maybe there are some social awards, bachelorette of the year. There are social construct awards that we win in business also. As podcasters, we win awards. As digital communicators, there are awards. I have a communicator award right up here. Awards are an excellent way to demonstrate, expertise and visibility. And it's leveraging those pieces again that make it shareable. And I look at how celebrities build their brands. They win awards. They don't have one life. They don't have one shot in their entire lifetime to win that award. Sometimes we think we only have one shot. I think you have one shot a year. Emmys are one shot. When I realized that I didn't have an Emmy after 25 years of being in TV because I never applied, like that was the number one reason why I could certifiably say I have never, and I didn't qualify for Emmys back in TV back in the early 2000s. They weren't doing it for casting than they are now, which is exciting. So part of my career trajectory pivoted to be a producer so I could get that Emmy, because that award is something that within my industry we understand, but outside of my industry as well. And I think that that's where there's a real opportunity to stand out. And podcasting is a great way for people who may traditionally identify as non-creative, as like non-artistic television performer, media people who now use creative communication as a way to market, though us people who are now certifiably creators because we have Androids and iPhones and businesses that thrive on the creativity that we have. This is the way that I know how to help them stand out of the gate, especially in this creator economy. And I find
Absolutely.
that, it builds stamina and self-confidence right out of the gate.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I would say, and I can speak for this personally, that the one thing that I think podcasting has done has really, it does increase your confidence. With like, if you go back and watch start your podcast, 100 episodes in, go back and watch your original, you will be astounded at the amount of progress that you have made in your own communication, your own, presence on screen, etc. It is extremely powerful. I want to. This is quite an interesting thing because you talked a lot about, those people that are quite creative, and we see loads and loads and loads of those people, and there's absolutely a place for them. And then there's the people that kind of look at. I'm going to point out a couple of social media platforms that other people would shy away from because they would say, I'm not really that creative. We've got the likes of TikTok and Instagram and all those sorts of places where you've got, creative videos happening on there. And for this type of environment, I think you guys can see for yourself, you can hear for yourself, we don't have to be overly creative here. Two people on a screen right now in a live show environment, but two people behind a couple of microphones having a good old chat about the power of podcasting. And we don't have to be overly creative. We just have to be ourselves and be able to know our stuff, know what our audience wants, and be able to, again, share that information in a way that's relatable. What is your take on that? Like, are you seeing the same sorts of thing?
Yeah, it's fun. It not necessarily. You don't necessarily need to be overly creative, but you do need to be overly prepared. It's kind of like it's like wanting to be the best guest at dinner at Christmas or Thanksgiving. You're coming home or you're visiting someone's family. You want to know the name of the kids. You want to know what plays or teams they're part of. You want to make sure you understand any sensitivities to ingredients. Also, by the way, I'm the oldest in my family. You come with a goodie bag because this is good and I'm coming to get nourished. And podcasting, for me, the coolest thing about podcasting is no one owns it. This is not the TV industry, the movie industry. You own your content. There's a part in television where, as you go higher up the hierarchy of TV, where power seems to go, there's a part where ultimately they lose control and it becomes, it's out of our control. It's above my pay grade, or the board. By the way, media is publicly traded. Most public media, the networks that we're sort of thinking about are publicly traded companies. So there's, mechanisms in place to leverage that. I do think though that the more confident and the more resilient you can be as a podcaster, and again, not even as a host. I thought I needed to be a host to get good at podcasting. I wish someone would have just said, Vin, first do podcast guesting. I wish I would have, because it's so rewarding for me to look out in the audience, to look out in the social verse, in the metaverse, in the TV world, in the press world, and see faces that I find familiar. I find confidence in knowing that I'm going in a direction with a large group of people that I recognize as being successful in this space. And being able to grow and learn from those people and again, I worked in TV. So like I was taught to network up, know your directors and your VPs and your SVPs. And then what happened in TV is like everyone left. And I realize now, especially in podcasting, how much I have to learn from experts that are coming into podcasting by way of dentistry and again, all these lawyers and accountants, people who can show me how to run a team that I never would have thought of, because I've only personally ever run creative teams. It's been a journey.
I think that's a really good point you make too, is that there's such diversity in the podcasting world. If we relate this to television, I mean, you would be required to go and pitch the idea to a bunch of directors and producers and go, hey, do you think this is going to sell? Do you think that people will actually enjoy this particular content? And if it's not going to make them money, the answer is probably no. Whereas in this space, you can be the little dentist underneath my building right now who jumps on and talks about, the the advancements in veneers, or how they're now doing the new crown, dentistry. I mean, all of that sort of stuff that a television station would be like,
without none of the
we're
weird
not interested in that.
weird dating, theme or some scavenger hunt or true crime twist on I completely agree with you. And what's powerful about
that.
What's powerful about it is that how much control we have over discoverability, that you don't have to bend to other conversations or platforms or needs to be able to be seen and heard in a place and point in time where you want to be. You have a lot of control over where you are when you get discovered. So to that question about Instagram and TikTok and the creativity, I would say there's a place for it, but there's also a place for minimalism in that space as well. And you know what? That might not vibrate as high frequency as possible because it's not the most engaging or rewarding for data in terms of like those platforms initiatives. But one of the reasons why I like LinkedIn is LinkedIn rewards the conversation and not the content. And if you can get a solid conversation under content rolling, it's going to increase your visibility versus some of the other platforms that are public. Again, I mean, they're LinkedIn. So everything we're talking about is publicly traded. So there's, it's a scrupulous system that the people who own it want to get paid for, but then they also don't want it to do, the way that the things that it's doing. But I think that I'm on Instagram. I hear all the time, where have you been? What's going on? I'm like, LinkedIn. Like, do I need to leave an out of message note on Instagram to say I'm home? And then, by the way, Instagram came out with that feature. Yeah, they came out with that feature. And it makes me realize, why not? Why not tell people I'm here? But where I prefer to have my action is happen, here. In terms of social media presence, I would think less about how you show up on a platform. I would think more on a campaign level, how can the platform support one of your core messages? So right now, like one of my core messages is discoverability. And I love showcasing IMDb, for example, the Internet Movie Database. I love showcasing podcasters to tell them how we can get credits for podcasters as production companies, executive producers, hosts, award winners, taglines. All the content that we've created can go on IMDb, which is going to create a tremendous amount of link backs that you will see in SEO across all search platforms. This is not a Google hack, although it will change your Google search image results like instantly. So I'm really passionate about making sure people know about IMDb. It's free. You don't need a pro account to do it. All you need is IP that exists. And then what you're actually doing is telling Amazon that you are the founder, creator, owner of this IP. Again, we talk about the future of media. On LinkedIn, I'll talk about the business side of it. On Instagram, I might think about I might think about how difficult it is to get a release signed every once in a while. I might, come up with think of some of the pain points. Just by the way, so it's like creative therapy for me. You see me laughing and kind of going through it already. I'm like, I got to get this out my system. And I think more on those platforms on how can I support this larger piece of content than how do I need to appear day to day, post to post in front of this audience. Like what's my LinkedIn voice? What's my Instagram, voice people have, they change their social media voices based on platforms. And I'm trying to, and I know there's data around not cutting and pasting content, but I'm not saying repeat the same thing, but instead of changing your voice, you're just customizing the message to a platform's strength as opposed to your strength. And you're talking to someone who will never niche down a personality or a personal brand. I am niche down a product or a message. I'm down with that. But there's no part of me that's going to make you smaller. Like I get Beyonce needs
the opposite, right? We want to amplify that.
Beyonce needs music fans and fashion fans and film fans, and collectively that becomes a killer community that supports her. And then you have all the other activations that she does, and I can go on and on about even local journalists or local recognizable faces, how they're able to tap into that. That's how small businesses can really stand out right now, especially on social media.
So what we're essentially saying here is that this is a real mindset shift around how we look at utilizing the different platforms that we have to actually meet the needs of the audiences that are sitting on each of those platforms. Because like you say, Beyonce, she's going to have, different audiences that follow her on those different platforms. And you then tailor what you're talking about and the way that you talk about it to suit those particular platforms. And I think the other piece here around, us just understanding like who they are and making sure that we're creating, I'm going to say, we want to think about this like we have our own broadcasting arm of our businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of businesses, when they're thinking about what should I post on social media, what should I do on my podcast, we almost think about those in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
And what we want to be doing, what you're saying here, is we want to bring them all together and think about the overarching messages that we want to be sharing, and then adapting those to suit the individual platforms so that you get the best amount of airtime. Your content is most shareable on each of those platforms, and therefore just by doing that, your visibility and your level of influence is going to increase with that, almost by default.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm salivating at how you're processing that. Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. And
I want to ask this question, like, what are some of the biggest mistakes kind of that you see people making when they're trying to get discovered and they're trying to increase their visibility? And what sort of things can they do to avoid them? Because I know we've talked a lot about kind of the high level stuff. Now I want to get kind of a little bit more nitty gritty, and what do you see they do?
yeah, well, first off, they get caught up in the story and they don't realize that the source is the most important. If the person you're speaking to doesn't trust the source, the story has no relevance. And my advice to you would be to position yourself as the source of stories. So instead of, for example, if you're a podcaster and you have a great quote with a business owner and you want to take it to maybe a niche magazine, or you want to pitch it to a blogger to write a story or something like that, and I can show you how to do that. One of the things that I would say is don't get lost in the quote. First and foremost, let them know that you've been doing this. Let them know how long you've been doing it, what's in the can, what you have to serve, and what's coming up, in the future. Let them know that you can be a viable, verifiable source for them, not only just to create content now, but in the future. Because if you're pitching content to press media, TV media, advertorial, editorial, they want to know that you're around for a while. After they confirm you are who you are and you become a trusted source, and the more trusted you are, the more you give them, the more you'll be trusted. And this is, I think, where people get it wrong and trying to get discovered, specifically with like local print press, for example. They reach out only when there's an opportunity for them, as opposed to creating an opportunity for networking. And I've been able to, through my old job, audition lots of people. So it gave me access to hundreds of thousands of different types of people that I've met throughout my career. Some of them journalists, a lot of them journalists. I love news and journalism. Like, that's strongly, deeply in my wheelhouse as a casting director. And I just got sidetracked there because I'm thinking about how I jumped from Fox News to MTV and like how much journalism's really have that impact. But they taught me to the power of the relationship. And I had a conversation with Mandy Moore in my episode, and in that episode we were talking about future jobs that we haven't sort of taken on yet, and the role of director came up, and she hadn't yet directed an episode of This Is Us, and we kind of planted the seed in that episode that there's only a couple more episodes left, and I know we were going into the last season. So it was a conversation she was having, and it was something that I knew the press would find interesting because she's America's sweetheart and we're seeing her be successful, and female in film is always something that I know, a success story that I know media will be happy to jump on. And I was able to, through my relationship, leverage the visibility of that conversation, which came out in a very prominent newspaper, which was picked up in magazines. And then when the episode came out, it was a reference article that resurfaced again and actually got me in the Sunday Post and in print. And Mom was in town for it, so it was like a big win. All of it stemming. Yeah, I had a great moment to share. But if I wasn't a verifiable source to that person, if I wasn't consistently doing that, they wouldn't have taken the risk to take what I said happened into consideration, pitch it to the powers that be to be able to get it in print to go. And now that I do have that, it's been I've been able to go back in and continue to share information. I just had a recent conversation with a really cool rapper who was known for collaborating, and he gave me a great quote. So I was able to service that conversation. And really all I'm doing is looking for, and what that allows me to do, this relationship, knowing I have this relationship, by the way, this is what I call pre-purpose. So a lot of people will focus on repurposing content because they're surprised that they suddenly have to advertise or market or promote their content. I'm saying, I know I have to. If I can find 5 people who I know will support me, I'm not going to put something on social media and then secretly tag you and like hide it under the photo, or tag my friends and hope that they're nudge, hope that you're supposed to know to retweet it. Or no, I'm finding people who are proud and loud about being committed to what I want to accomplish this quarter. They're part of the alchemy, right? This is a big movement that I'm creating. I want them to feel like how this audience sees this content matters more. It matters more because I could tell you we watch movie trailers more than we've ever seen movies, right? Like how many, we could talk about movies and TV shows just from the clips commercials and clips we've seen. So this is why being in pre-purpose, understanding where my visibility matters most and how it can be set up to be shareable, that's also something that people aren't taking into consideration. And I think that's probably the easiest thing to fix, is to say, hey, I've got a goal. Here's how I'm going to achieve it. Does any of this align with your audience? And ask 2 questions. 1, would you like to have input and shape some of the questions and output that's going to come from this conversation? And then ask the second question is like, how does this serve you? How can I help you with this content that I'm creating? And they might say, maybe if you're going to record an ad for me, or maybe they can do an intro. Maybe there's a PSA for like mental health that you might be able to put in the top of your podcast. So I can come up with lots of ideas and ways to layer and reciprocate, creativity back and forth. But this is one of the ways that I've seen people be able to stand out and grow that they're just not aware of, because they get caught in the media, the files, and the whole content of it all. You want to sell a TV show to a network? It's not, you don't sell it to MTV. You sell it to a person, and that person goes and tells their boss, and that boss goes, at network. That's, the how it is, and how we can be supported. We really, again, we have a lot of control over that, and we don't have to be successful in spite of social media. We can be successful because of our relationships on social media, if we have them planned out.
I'm really pleased that you've made those particular points, because as you talk through that particular segment, you've talked about the importance of preparation, and pre-purposing. So being prepared, understanding, what is it that I'm trying to achieve here? Who are some of the key players that I could bring in to help elevate what it is that I'm actually doing? You also touched on consistency. And we know that in this podcasting world, right, there's millions and millions and millions of podcasts, but very few of them make it past, I think it's 6 episodes. They peter out. People they're all hyped up. They want to do their podcast. They've got, an amazing thing that they want to share. And they get to episode 5 and 6, and they don't start seeing the results that they want, because they want instant downloads overnight. And therefore, then they shift their attention somewhere else, and their podcast, ends up, being lost somewhere. So that consistency is really key. And that's one of those things that has really helped you to gain credibility in your industry, is because people can see you show up, you do the thing, you show up, you do the thing, and that you'll become reliable. You become a reliable source of information. And the other thing that I think is extremely important that you've talked about is the importance of relationships. So it's not just about what can I use and abuse you for, but it's how can I create a beneficial relationship here that is not just going to be a one-trick wonder, but that I'm going to create something because I've had the foresight to pre-purpose and pre-prepare that not only am I going to give you this content for today, but this content will be suitable for you many, many, many times over. And from a journalist perspective, that obviously will give them, wow, this guy's amazing, because you've just saved them a whole heap of work. They don't have to try and go and find somebody else to supply that piece of information. They've already got their trusted source of stories. So I think those are some really great takeaways from just that little segment. I want to know here, I want to go here before we kind of round out today's episode, but we are seeing some significant changes in technology in the world, particularly in web. We've kind of gone from Web 2, where we've got social media and people are sharing their information on the likes of, Facebook, Instagram, and all of those sorts of things. And now we're in this world of Web 3 and a new generation of internet, right? And that giving people more control over their data and their ability to interact with like decentralized stuff. And we can talk about all of that again. I will in another episode. But for today, how do you see that impacting podcasting? And us as content creators, how do you see that sort of playing out?
Oh yeah, think about this. In a world of Web3 where you are the owner of this episode, but you might agree to give me 25% back end if I'm able to bring in my sponsors or my advertisers or other relationships. And that by owning a simple data point, it allows us to build a contract between a piece of content that's scalable. So our success tied to a piece of content on a singular episode, right? That should this episode be able to be leveraged, for example, in a mastermind, or if I do a compendium of classes and I wanted to use a piece of this there, I'd now be able to have a relationship and a contract with you that's really hard to track right now. It's possible. I do those relationships and it's on paper and it's really hard to track, and it takes a lot of manpower, people power to keep
and
researching, and trust, and trust and transparency, that's one of the ways that it's going to help us, is to be able to be, it's collaborative. We're edging towards a more collaborative, creative environment. We to be a creator, generally speaking, it calls on collaboration, but not in publishing. But what I'm seeing in social media is in publishing. On Twitter, I can co-tweet. On Instagram, I can co-post. And the ability to partner up together to have a unified voice matters. Look, this is the year of AI. I think the message is like, what's being said doesn't matter who is saying it, matters more than ever. And where you and I have the ability to, again, take what we're doing and turn this into a book or a speaking tour or an illustrated children's book. I mean, I can come up with lots of different ways that we'd be able to maybe leverage this piece of, affiliate links. And I can think of all the ways. My mind is racing now.
Your mind just starts going, right?
It makes all of those possibilities easier for us to be able to transact. And right now it takes trust because of all the small pieces. Most people want a manager or an agent or a team to be able to track those small pieces. We're creating content at a race
speed,
way faster than the podcast community. The world is growing because of us. It's our collaborations, it's our episodes, it's our series. We are the alchemy of podcasting that is growing. So this industry isn't growing faster than us. It's us that is growing this industry. That's really, really powerful to think of. It really reminds me of the late 90s in reality TV, where my job at MTV was to call up celebrities and say, would you like to come in and let us pitch your show to you? And would you like to do it with us? I didn't have to have a deal in place with a talent because there was no one else out there doing what we were doing. So I could make phone calls and build trust. And I would leverage that, by the way. I would say, look, this is just our idea and how we can see doing it, but you have full authority and autonomy over what happens next. So like, if you like the idea, hit me back. If you don't like it, let's spit back and forth. No, there's interest here, and maybe there's another way we can, work together. But I can get the door open. You mentioned consistency, and I wanted to say, I thought of this. I thought of Nicole Kidman in The Undoing. I think it's like a six episode miniseries, by the way. So why can Nicole Kidman do 6 episodes in a miniseries and it not be seen as not a success? But when we try to set out as a podcast series and we get 6 episodes, it's seen almost as like a failure or a flop. And one of the things I wanted to point out is in the architecture of these podcast episodes that I actually love. I love pitching smaller anthology series. I love this idea in the future of podcasting. Tracy and I collaborate on the 4 ultimate podcasting episodes to XYZ, where it becomes a finite audio product that you can then leverage. And I can take that product and then put an ad for it in this podcast and in my podcast, and we can build other audio spaces to it and keep pushing to it. So I can really see podcasting right now, this idea of like a file and it goes to an audience, that's powerful. Search is important for discovery in podcasting right now, and especially in media. More important than that is going to be our recommendations. My predictions, 2023. Now I think there's a new team at Netflix. I hopefully hope they let us start recommending shows to each other on Netflix. They have our address and info. Why can't I be like, Tracy, here are the 5 shows you need to see, and send it to you? And like, you give me a check and be like, Vinny, stop sending me Friends season 2. I've already seen it 10,000. Why aren't we sharing some of that content? I think that's the future of discovering content. It really comes from us. I also think that podcasting, especially podcasting directories, are going to boom by the end of this year. I see TV networks and production and supermarkets and like we have Walgreens and CVS and drugstores and supermarkets and grocery markets being the go-to places for podcasts because they already sell the product of the people most likely who are advertising in that type of media. If I can purchase a product after listening to content or discover something that's going to help me, or if I'm already shopping, like I watch Bravo, and I could see Bravo having a Bravo podcast network that just has podcasts that supports housewives and podcasts that support Below Deck and all their programming. Now, they don't pay to make those podcasts, but they share advertisers with them, and they also gate who the cast can speak to in podcasting. So there's a reciprocity right now between Bravo podcasters and Bravo. Bravo makes a 24 episode series with 1 hour episodes. That's 24 hours of content. But those podcasters are going to make hundreds of thousands of more hours of content. And that's going to be a big part of how we start working with broadcast, and that podcast to broadcast relationship is going to come a little bit tighter too. You ask me as a small business, how do I get on television? I'm a dentist. How do I get on TV? I'm a lawyer. I'm an accountant. Podcasting is going to be one of the ways that we, without a doubt, can do it. I worked at MTV. Remember in the 80s, 90s, the music video was on. You didn't need to be in the TV room to see what was on TV. You knew what was on TV. In fact, you can listen to it with most of your siblings in your family, and then, except for some cringeworthy songs in the 80s and 90s. And I can see podcasting being the same thing, the same experience, the same audio experience of entertainment in the living room, in a common room.
I mean, so it goes without saying that we're in a very exciting time. The things that are happening in the content creation space, and with AI technology and Web3 and blockchain and all these sorts of things that are not coming, that are here in the now for people to start researching and utilizing in their businesses. The opportunity is massive. It is an absolute game changer, and it is reshaping the way in which people live their lives, make a living, and it's going to be, I'm going to say, happening at pace. So just dribbling out, this stuff is happening at pace. Its speed to market is incredible, and what's happening there. So, Vinny, I want to just let all of our listeners know, like they will have listened to today's show. They're probably going, oh my God, I want to know more about this. Like, what exactly does Vinny do? And where do I get more of where can I consume more of Vinny? Tell them exactly what it is that you can do for them, and where can they find you?
Oh, that is a generous question. I appreciate that. I'd like to say I help people find fame and leverage it. If fame is the goal, I will be able to recommend you to other people and platforms that will help you. But if leveraging fame, if looking for notoriety in public media or in social media or private media is a goal of yours as a business owner, as a founder-led business owner, as a talent brand, then I definitely interact well with that type of energy. On my website, vpe.tv/hub, you'd find in my creator hub, you would find over 100 awards worthy of winning, 50 creator platforms that pay. So if you're a podcaster right now in the podcast industry and you're looking for ways to monetize, there are literally a list of platforms I signed up and I put my name on. And if a brand wants to work with a creator like me with a smaller audience that does, all the checks and boxes that I fit into, I make myself available to be discovered. And I make a couple of $100 or a couple of $1,000 a month, depending on the opportunities at hand, just by being on a list. And then the power in that, helping you win awards, a step-by-step guide to get on IMDb, because I did talk about that. I've got that too. It's really important, podcasters, to get out there and it's not about claiming credit. The coolest part about what we can do as podcasters on IMDb is giving credit, actually. Creative credits specifically on IMDb, they are like a flagpole in your expertise. It says, I have been here, I have done that. It's an evergreen handshake that says, we met, we connected on a project. It's a data point that Google, Bing, and Yahoo and other search platforms are going to see. It's going to bring visibility to the relationship, not just to the individuals. And it's a really powerful thing that credits get to do. I built my whole resume on credits. Other TV networks seeing what I did at other networks because they Googled to see who worked on those shows and working backwards that way. If you're looking to get booked in local press, I promise you, your local news producers go to IMDb to see other people who've maybe performed on local press. It's a great way to stand out. So all that information documented, all those tactics. I'm all about the tactics. I believe there is good and great strategy out there. I believe that with solid tactics, good strategy can turn great. And that's really what my focus is. If someone tells you your color needs to be blue, I'll tell you the list of colors that I think work best and where to find them. That's the difference in the type of media advising that I'm doing versus a strategist or a coach.
Awesome. And so just for everybody, again, head on over to vpe.tv. That's where you can find more of Vinny. He's got a whole lot of free resources on there that you guys can download. If you're interested in this particular subject matter, go there and get yourself your hands on that. And if you're wondering what IMDb stands for, it's Internet Movie Database. And again, we can talk about that in more detail and kind of delve into that in another episode. But I want to say a huge thank you to you today, Vinny. This has been I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. We had a good old laugh before we jumped on, and it has been really interesting to just chat with somebody else who's so passionate about helping other people elevate their personal brands, enabling them to get more exposure, enabling them to really find their voice and get seen by the right people, amplifying their brand, as we say. So I want to say a huge big thank you to taking your time out of the nightclub. He's not really in the nightclub, guys, but in Brooklyn, and spending the time with me here all the way from the Gold Coast. So I want to tell everybody where you guys can tune in for the next episode of The Unlock Show. You guys know that I go live every Wednesday. We are live, and I'm going to say on occasion I go live on a Friday. I'm not always doing a double show, twice a week, but definitely Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Brisbane time is where you can find us live. If you prefer to listen to the replay you want to watch it on video, you can go to find me on Facebook, Tracy M. Wilson. You can go to my website, you'll find it on there. You can go to YouTube, you'll find it there. If you prefer to listen to the podcast version, you will find me on all major podcasting platforms, Spotify, iTunes, so on and so forth. Just type in Tracy M. Wilson or Unlocked with Tracy M. Wilson, and you will find the shows. If you enjoyed this one, you are bound to enjoy many, many others. So go and have a little binge. You know, there's, I don't know, probably a good 200 odd hours worth of content for you to consume that's going to help you as the entrepreneur unlock the secrets to business growth and personal development. Go out there, unlock your future, and make 2023 your best year yet. Thanks very much, Vinnie. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. See you next week. Alrighty, bye for now.